Last night at around midnight East Coast time, this is what Donald Trump was posting. Videos of former President Biden falling, walking up the steps to Air Force One. This is how immature and despicable Donald Trump is. Also on his social media platform, as you look through his other posts where he says, this is a golden age. We're in a golden age, everybody. They have ads by his Secretary of Health and Human Services, RFK Jr., saying RFK Jr. says they lied about hydroxychloroquine. Stock up now before it's too late. 10% off with the code TRUTH10. This is the idiocracy and dangerousness of the Trump regime. They're hawking products like that. Donald Trump then posts massive trade deficit with world. Just announced compliments of sleepy Joe Biden. I will change that. Or this, government funding runs out next week and Democrats are threatening to shut down the government. But I am working with the great House Republicans on a continuing resolution to fund the government until September. Democrats don't control either chamber of Congress. They don't control the executive branch. What are you talking about? I mean, these MAGA Republicans are always playing the victim. Let's look at what the real headlines say. This is from the Wall Street Journal. So I'm giving you a right-leaning paper owned by Rupert Murdoch, okay? Here's what the Wall Street Journal says. Tariff war risks sinking the world into new Great Depression, warns the International Chamber of Commerce. So a right-wing paper citing a right-wing group is talking about a Great Depression. The world economy could face a crash similar to the Great Depression of the 1930s. Or how about this headline right here? Trump wants to kill $52.7 billion semiconductor chips subsidy law. Right? Donald Trump during that joint session talked about getting rid of the CHIPS Act, which helps red states and blue states and all Americans. How about this headline also from the Wall Street Journal? The recession trade is back on Wall Street. How about this headline from The Guardian? Jack Daniels makers say Canada pulling U.S. alcohol off their shelves is worse than tariffs. We also heard from the Kentucky Distillers Association, and they sent a public statement about how Kentucky bourbon is getting absolutely crushed, and it employs 23,000 people in the state of Kentucky, and now they are getting harmed significantly. Now, when former President Biden was in office, I remember headlines like American economy, the envy of the world, in the Wall Street Journal and other papers like that. I want to share this with you because as Donald Trump is posting photos and videos of former President Biden falling because Donald Trump is a petulant third grader, no offense to petulant third graders who are far more mature and exercise far better judgment than Donald Trump, I want to remind you of this speech that former President Biden gave. When everything he said here was true. We had the strongest economy. Unemployment was the lowest it was for 50 years. We're exporting American products and creating jobs. And Trump and his MAGA friends have a different view. He was warning everybody. He was prescient. Here he is, though. Let's play it.
It ignited a manufacturing boom, a clean energy boom, a semiconductor boom nationwide. And it's clear we have the strongest economy in the world. That's a fact. 15 million new jobs created in 3.5 years. Unemployment hasn't been this low for this long for 50 years. Wages are rising. Instead of importing foreign products, we're exporting American jobs. We're exporting American products and creating American jobs. Here in America, where they belong. But folks, my predecessor and his MAGA Republican friends have a very different view. They oppose the CHIPS and Science Act that's powering this growth today. In fact, your Congressman, Brandon Williams, called it corporate welfare. Bless me, Father.
So that was former President Biden. I'll let you judge for yourself because Corporate media wanted to make a whole big deal about former President Biden's age. And for me, I always thought age meant wisdom. And I understood that former President Biden spoke slower than he did before and would stutter. Perhaps it was a little more pronounced in later years. I interviewed former President Biden for a half hour. Go back and watch that interview, 30 minutes straight with former President Biden. I found someone who was calm, confident, deliberate, and who had a plan that he had executed that helped our country. So you saw that video of former President Biden. I'll show you this video of Donald Trump in the Oval Office yesterday when he was asked by a reporter about the news that the Trump administration was going to revoke TPS, temporary protected status, from the nearly 300,000 Ukrainians who are in the United States and send them back to Ukraine and deport them immediately. Trump didn't even know what TPS meant. He thought the reporter was saying GPS, and he was very confused. Here, play this clip.
TPS for the Ukrainians who live here in the U.S.
What about it?
Are you considering revoking the TPS status for the more than 200,000 Ukrainians who live here in the U.S.?
Oh, what are you saying?
The Ukrainians that are here in the U.S., they're under a TPS status.
On GPS?
TPS, temporary.
Oh, I thought you said GPS.
TPS.
Yeah.
There was some news saying they were going to be revoked and they were going to be deported from the country. Are you considering that? For the
Well, we're not looking to hurt anybody. We're certainly not looking to hurt them. And I'm looking at that, and there were some people that think that's appropriate and some people don't, and I'll be making a decision pretty soon. Okay?
And no, Donald, TPS, temporary protected status. Yes, that's what you revoked of the Venezuelans who supported you, of the Cubans who supported you, and other Latinos who supported you. And you promised that you were going to take care of them, but you revoked their family members' TPS. You sent them back to Venezuela. You sent them back to other countries that they don't even live in, because apparently this Trump regime makes no distinction. Horrific stuff. Also, here was Donald Trump from the Oval Office yesterday saying that he does not believe that our NATO allies would ever defend the United States of America. Just watch this.
And the biggest problem I have with NATO, I really, I know the guys very well. They're friends of mine. But if the United States was in trouble and we called them, we said, we got a problem, France, we got a problem, a couple of others I won't mention. Do you think they're going to come and protect us? They're supposed to. I'm not so sure. So with Japan, we have a deal, which is a very interesting one.
What a ridiculous, despicable thing to say as he attacks NATO, quite literally spewing Putin talking points. Our NATO allies have always been by our side. When America needed our NATO allies, they were there all the time. You can go back in history, from the earliest days in American history to some of the most recent. Our NATO allies, since NATO was created, and before then, our European allies, bravely and courageously fought with America. As French President Emmanuel Macron wrote recently, you may want to take a look at your American history, Donald, and when Lafayette was there with you in the very early days of America's founding, we were there with you every step of the way since then. This is Brandon Gill, ultra MAGA Republican Congress member. Here he is basically saying that veterans, why do veterans think they're special? Veterans think that they should get jobs. I'm not going to show you many more clips of MAGA Republicans saying this because I've showed you this before, but this is the general sentiment of MAGA Republicans. Play this clip.
To assure veterans that their services will not be interrupted by these cuts?
Well, first of all, I want to go back to that. What the problem with the Social Security is that they're not communicating with other agencies that are sending out checks. That's what they've identified. But as it relates to the VA, I'd like to remind people that Nobody in the United States has a right by God to have a job at taxpayer expense at the federal government, myself included. But my children and our grandchildren do have a birthright to inherit a country that is not bankrupt.
Now, we know that last night as well, there was a failed launch of one of the SpaceX starships, right? This, as Donald Trump in that same Oval Office address talked about how Elon was going to go and get those astronauts who Donald Trump mused may fall in love with each other up there. I mean, again, what a sick, demented mind by Donald Trump. But yes, last night the FAA halted flights into Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach, and Orlando airports for space launch debris until at least 8 p.m. Eastern. The move follows the failed launch of the SpaceX Starship, which lifted off from Starbase in South Texas. And then we also learned that the FAA is delaying flights departing from Miami International Airport and Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport, with delays averaging 45 minutes. Not a big surprise here as well that the new Reuters Ipsos poll shows that Donald Trump's approval when it comes to foreign policy issues is -13 and plummeting even more by the day. Yesterday, of course, Donald Trump caved to Canada and Mexico. Trump imposed the tariffs on Canada and Mexico, then withdrew them, and then gave another date, April 2nd, where Trump says he's super serious. Now, this real time, they're going into effect April 2nd. No one takes Donald Trump seriously anymore. His threats have been shown to be completely empty and dangerous and provocative as he goes after our allies. This is Stephen Miller, one of Donald Trump's top aides, attacking the university system. I mean, what are these idiots even talking about? We're going to go after, we're going to make you feel pain. So ridiculous.
They do, but I will tell you, they will feel this pain if they lose these federal funds. They have many programs that are funded directly by the federal government that will not continue if they do not change their behavior and change their behavior quickly. These universities are on notice. President Trump has issued the warning. We will use every federal tool we have. Let's be very clear. This is a violation of the federal civil rights of American students and American Jewish students on these campuses.
And when you think about what these tariffs are all about, too, I mean, doesn't this reveal the whole game? Former Morgan Stanley banker Michael Grimes expected to lead the new U.S. Sovereign Wealth Fund. Sources say the U.S. Sovereign Wealth Fund to be financed by tariffs imposed on foreign countries. Sources say, first off, tariffs are a tax on the American companies, on the importers. Let's just start with that. So this whole tariff plan, it always traces back to Trump enriching himself. He wants a sovereign wealth fund the way MBS of Saudi Arabia has one, so Trump could have his own little piggy bank and just buy things. Meanwhile, he and the MAGA Republicans are giving tax cuts to the billionaires that will lead to at least $19 trillion added to the deficit over the next 10 years, at least. Look at this picture. I started off by showing you what Donald Trump was posting, mocking former President Biden, who courageously led our country out of the hellscape that Donald Trump created with COVID in 2020. Just look at this. Just look at these people. Look at MAGA Mike. Like, just zoom in on his face. Look at Trump's face. Look at weirdo J.D. Vance. I mean, these are demented individuals. I don't even want to call them men. These are demented individuals who are giving standing ovations when they were talking about getting rid of laws that helped red states, getting rid of the CHIPS Act, getting rid of infrastructure projects, attacking veterans as they talk about conquering Greenland. That's what they looked like. Just look at these. Look at this bizarre scene right there. Finally, this is what French President Emmanuel Macron said yesterday, responding to Donald Trump questioning whether Europe would ever come to the United States' defense. As for the question of whether France would come to the aid of the United States of America, I will invoke our centuries-old history. Lafayette came, Pershing made the journey in the opposite direction, invoking the memory, and just a few days ago I stood alongside American veterans who had traveled to Omaha Beach, as so many others have done before. We have always been there for each other. But may I remind you that it was not just the French, but also the Europeans who stood by in Afghanistan. And in fact, they were not given a polite heads up in Afghanistan. So we are loyal and faithful allies. And if anyone doubts it, please only look at your contemporary history. It simply justifies what we have for the United States of America, what I have for its leaders, respect and friendship. And I believe we have every right to expect the same in return because our history shows we have earned it. Thank you for watching. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 5 million subscribers together. Thank you.
The truth is more important than ever. Check out our new Truth Over Lies collection at store.MeidasTouch.com. All 100% USA union made.